Organised Labour says it is advocating for an annual adjustment to Nigeria's 70,000 naira minimum wage to reflect inflation. According to President of the Trade Union Congress, Festus Osifo, the proposal aims to link wage increases to yearly inflation rates. He noted that waiting for periodic reviews, even under the new 3-year adjustment rule, fails to keep pace with rising costs. Osifo suggested that inflation figures released annually by the National Bureau of Statistics should be applied to the minimum wage. He explained that if inflation stands at 35%, the wage would be adjusted accordingly. Labor unions argue that the current 70,000 naira introduced in July of 2024 is insufficient amid surging living costs fueled by higher energy prices and subsidy removal. And now to discuss this, we're joined by Labour Law Expert Ireoluwa Oguntuase. Ireoluwa, compliments of the season and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too, Judith. How are you?
Well, I'm doing the New Year. That's all that matters. Let's get started. I mean, how effective is this proposed system of annual adjustments based on inflation address the issue of wage erosion in Nigeria? I mean, if you're saying yearly, what if the inflation jumps from 35 to 50 in 1 month? Just saying. It's a question. Just asking.
Okay, it's all right. Well, in looking at the proposal made by the Nigerian Labour Congress, let me first say something. It's extremely laughable to me because there is a Latin maxim in law that says that volenti non fit injuria. That means you can't claim injury to what you already consented to. Now, if you look at the Minimum Wage Act, the amended 2024, you will see that there is a clear provision as to how the minimum wage can be arrived at. And these provisions were followed. The Nigerian Labour Congress, the Trade Union Congress, they were all part of it. Suggestions were made. It took an extensive and expansive deliberation. Now, for them now to be coming and now to be proposing that, okay, the previous deliberation and agreement that now gave birth to the reviewed Minimum Wage Act is no longer or should no longer be in place, and they should now review it. For me, I don't think I agree with that, because the legal framework for this thing is that, and in accordance to what they agree upon, every three years, I think the issue of inflation should have been put into proper perspective before they agree on every 3 years. Now, whatever they are proposing now, for me, I don't think the federal government will agree to it. And even if the federal government will want to agree to it, it will be extremely discretionary because the legal framework is very clear. And the previous provision, I think Section 3 or Section 4 was amended from 5 years to 3 years. Now, what were they looking at? As at the time the provision was amended from 5 years to 3 years, why can't they insist that it should be done yearly? So I think whatever they are doing now, they should wait till after 3 years, because that's the principle of rule of law.
Right.
Except the federal government wants to use their discretion.
Right. I mean, we had this conversation back in July of 2024, and even after, when this was, and we talked about this, that 3 years is not visible. It's not visible for the future. It must be looked at. And now for the TUC to come out with this, it begs to ask the question about the mechanism, right? Can this mechanism then ensure that the minimum wage remains a living wage and keeps pace with the rising cost of living? Should the government decide to, do this at a, cautionary or discretionary pace in how they see fit, will this ensure a certain level of living wage?
Well, even if they decide to do it, we need to understand something. And we need to understand that sometimes increase in minimum wage may not be the solution. Now, what are the indices that are causing inflation? That may as well be the solution. So if the government can address the indices, and I think that's what they should be pushing for, indices in terms of fuel, indices in terms of food inflation, indices in terms of electricity. Those are the things that is causing things to skyrocket, commodities to skyrocket. So I believe that if those things can be addressed, then we are not going to witness hyperinflation or galloping inflation, as it were. And it may not be the appropriate solution to now be saying that minimum wage should be increased yearly to reflect living wage. Because whether we like it or not, even if the government increases minimum wage, commodities will also increase. And at the same time, we should also consider the ability to pay. For example, most of the states now, How many of them are complying with this new minimum wage now? How many? There are some that they cannot pay. There are some that they are still struggling to pay. So those are the things that should be put in proper perspective before Labour comes out and now start proposing another thing. And like I said before, this thing is strictly a product of law. It is not what someone can come and say that, okay, we want to review this again. Nigeria operates a written constitution, in which case there is a regulatory procedure under our constitution in which the bill, the laws rather, can be amended. An act of parliament can be amended. So anything they are making proposal on now, it will be subject to amendment again by the National Assembly. We need to put that into proper perspective before the Nigerian Labour Congress start making all these proposals. So those are the things I'm saying.
Right. And, you just talked about the potential challenges of implementing such a system, right? And just saying that the focus should be on looking at the indices and just improving the economy. But how will the annual adjustment, to the minimum wage impact the Nigerian economy? Let's look at that from that point of view. Could it lead to increased labor costs for businesses and even potentially impacting inflation?
Well, you've already answered the question. If they are just minimum wage, we also need to look at the private sector, because this issue is tripartite. We have government on one hand, we have employees that are represented by the Nigerian Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress on the other hand, and we also have the private organization as a third party. Now, for the private organization, what they are going to do, if there is an adjustment, is that it should also amount to increase in their own expenses. If it amounts to increase in their own expenses as far as salaries is being paid, what they are going to do is to also increase their services. Everything would automatically increase. For me, I don't think that the economy will be better off if government stops continuously increase minimum wage. In as much that I will support minimum wage, but I would also say that it should be done, with caution, in such a way that inflation will not skyrocket. Of course, we already have inflation. But there is another type of inflation that may be caused by constant increase in the minimum wage, which I don't want to happen. Almost all the sectors will be affected. So that's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Right. Ireoluwa, many thanks for coming on and just doing this with us. Let's see what will happen in the coming weeks and months, and let's see what happens. If the president decides, comes off holiday, gets back to work. And let's hear if all the labor heads get back to the table, and this can even be visible at the end. But once again, thank you, Ireoluwa Oguntuase. He is a labor law expert, just giving us a bit of insight there on TUC's proposal.